All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program tonight. My name is Larissa Disler, and I'm from the Galena Public Library in Galena, Illinois. And I'm beyond thrilled to see all of you here tonight for this conversation with TJ Klune and Douglas Mahan. And of course, I wish you all a happy Pride Month. And also, if you'd like to purchase any of TJ's books, our local independent bookstore, Galena Book and Paper, does have them both online. I'll share a link in the chat and in the store here on Main Street. And I will introduce our presenters tonight. The moderator is Douglas Mahan, who is the co-owner and innkeeper of Aldrich Guest House here in Galena. He's a library enthusiast and so proud to be a part of our local Pride celebrations here in Galena. And our featured author tonight, TJ Klune, the New York Times and USA Today best-selling Lambda Literary Award-winning author of The House in the Cerulean Sea, The Extraordinaries, and more. Being queer himself, Klune believes it is important now more than ever to have accurate, positive queer representation in stories. So please join me in welcoming both TJ and Douglas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Larissa. Hi. Thank you so much for having me. Happy Pride to everybody here.
And hello, thanks for being here with us tonight, TJ. It's awesome to get to sit down with you and even from all these miles away and chat with you about your awesome book, House in the Cerulean Sea. I first learned about your book earlier this year from a TikTok review on it. Looked really fun, and then Larissa was talking about how amazing it was as well, and I just fell in love with it. So I'm so excited to continue reading more of your work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. For those of our viewers that haven't gotten to watch or to read the book, would you just give kind of a quick overview of kind of what the book entails?
Yeah, that book came out in 2020, and it's funny that we're doing this virtually because that book came out the week the pandemic exploded in the United States. That Tuesday, March 17th, 2020, that's when everybody went insane. And here I was trying to champion a book about kindness and the Antichrist. It was a very weird time for everybody involved. But at its core, The House in the Cerulean Sea is about a man named Linus Baker who is essentially a caseworker. But in this world, he's a caseworker for magical children who are in orphanages around this country. And he is very good at what he does, so much so that after 17 years on the job of being a middle manager of sorts, he is instructed to meet with the higher ups, the very higher ups in his department. And they task him with an assignment that is classified to send him to an island to deal with what is called the world's most dangerous children. And he's essentially sent there to spy and to find out if the children are capable of what it's rumored to be. But what he finds is not something what he was told, that he has to reevaluate his entire life because of the work that he's done. While it has been in his best interest, and it has been in the best interest of the people he wants to help, because Linus is a kind man. But at the same time, after 17 years, he's turned into a cog, into a machine that will eat him whole and have no problem with trying to replace him for a part. So it's about exploring what it means to finally see color in your life for the first time and find a place where a home should not exist, but it actually does. And that is House in the Cerulean Sea. Ta-da.
I think that wraps it up really awesome.
Yeah. Good night, everybody. All right, bye.
Well, I have to say, it is by far one of the most inclusive books that I've ever read before. Just kind of on a human level, it really incorporates everyone in there, which is pretty awesome. I'm curious to know what your writing process looks like with that, how you get your ideas and inspirations for the different characters that are within there.
Yeah, so I knew at some point that I wanted to do a story with magical children and what they could face, but I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. And it really started with Lucy. I tend to hear characters speaking to me in my head, and when they start getting a little bit louder, that's when I start paying attention, because that means that they have something to say. And I knew, hearing Lucy, that he was not going to be the main character, but he was going to be an important character. I did not know who at the time. And as a matter of fact, I kind of let Lucy chatter on for a little bit, and then he, I guess, in a way, introduced me to Linus, the main character, and I took it from there to go with it. When writing a book like this and writing the books like Under the Whispering Door and In the Lives of Puppets that just came out, it's a lot of planning before I actually do anything. Because when I write, I want to be able to just immerse myself in the act of writing and not have to worry about any extraneous things that I have to further research. So if I can do as much of that work before I actually set word to page, then that just saves me a whole lot of trouble, because I have ADHD. So when it's easy for me to get distracted. So when I'm focusing on what I need to be focusing on, that's good. But when I get to a part where I'm like, oh, I don't know how to do this or what this means, I have to look it up. And then 6 hours later, I'm looking up completely different things that have nothing to do with what I did. So I have to be very meticulous with my planning. So when I get to the point where I'm ready to start the book, I can just go through it. And typically, like looking back, The House in the Cerulean Sea was written in 2017, 2018. The first draft of it. And I wrote, after doing everything I wanted to do, planning out the story, looking up everything I needed to look up, I probably wrote the book in 4 months at that point.
Oh, wow.
That's how prepared I need to be able to do that.
I know we have a lot of folks on here that are very interested in your actual process, wondering things about like if you're an outliner or kind of how you organize those thoughts and ideas as well.
Yeah. So if you've been online for any length of time, you've probably seen that meme from It's Always Sunny of Philadelphia, of Charlie standing in front of the conspiracy board with all the cards around him and all the lines attaching, and he looks a little crazy. That's that's kind of me. My outlines, first and foremost, are, to put it mildly, ridiculously long. And it is because when I'm doing the outlines, not only am I creating a narrative path for the story and, leaving some spots to fill in the blanks when I get there, but I'm also trying to immerse myself in the world as much as possible. So I'm putting in my outline things that never go in the books, like what the character's favorite food is, what do they have dreams about, what were they like as a kid if they're an adult, or what they could be like as an adult if they were a kid. All this stuff that goes into these characters that'll never be in the book, but it's just for me. So I can just know these people inside and out. And then once I get to that point, once I'm really getting good in the writing process, I will put up Post-it notes above my desk with narrative design, the narrative arc that I want to go through for, that week or whatever. And I have at times had to put up branching paths because I hadn't made a decision about what I wanted to do. So when I get to that point, I look up at the board, and that's when I know I have to make a decision. And so I do. And then you just go on from there. Do I get lost sometimes? Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes even the best outline in the world can't help being 80,000 words into a book. And then all of a sudden you have this idea that's so brilliant, but you need to go to the very beginning again to actually incorporate all of it. That happens. That really does happen. But outlining for me is the best way for me to be able to stay focused, being neurodiverse.
Nice. And do you have a specific kind of place or like that you like to write, kind of your happy writing place?
Oh, I can only write at my desk. The desk that I'm sitting, the desk that you're seeing right now, I actually have 2 writing desks. The desk that I'm sitting at right now is the desk that I use for editing. So I can actually look out the window and, while I'm working and be thinking. My actual writing desk is in a different room, and that faces a wall. So I can't look out a window or anything like that. So when I'm actually writing, I'm at my desk the whole time. God bless all the people who can go out into public and write. I don't know how you do it. You're either amazing or a psychopath. I have no idea. It could be either or. It could be one of those things. But for me, it would just be extraordinarily too distracting. So I have to be in the safety of my home to write. And if I try to write anywhere else, it feels bad.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you have that space and we get to be a part of it tonight.
Me too.
And then I know there's also interest in terms of the writing process. What's it like for you pitching to the publishers and getting your stories kind of in production that way?
So I have a very weird path that to get here, because if you started reading me in 2020, you could be you would not be um dismissed for thinking that that might have been my first book. That's not the case at all. I've been in publishing since 2011. I've published over 30 novels at this point, but I got my start back in the day when, in my late 20s going, I'm going to write the great American novel. And then I did. And it was not the great American novel. Trust me. It's and so I didn't know anything about anything. I have one semester of community college under my belt.
Okay.
School wasn't for me. And I was in the corporate world working at an insurance company whose lizard commercials you probably all know and despise. And I was the guy that if you were in a horrible, horrible accident and you were injured, or God forbid, someone died, guess who you spoke to? Me. I was that guy. So you can imagine how soul-sucking that is, and possibly where the inspiration for Linus came from. But I wrote that first book in a one-bedroom apartment in Tucson, Arizona, and I finished it, didn't tell anybody about it, Googled gay publishers, clicked on the first link, popped up, sent the book in, just this rough draft of a book, sent it into this publisher, and this publisher said, sure, why not? We'll take it. And here I am in 2023, all these years later. But essentially, I was in publishing for a good while. My books did better than anybody thought that they would, better than they probably had any right to. I won a few awards. That's all well, blah, blah, blah. That's cool. But in 2017, 2018, I wanted to change. I wanted to do something different. I felt like I was stuck in a rut with this same publisher, with the same people, talking to the same people, and all the time. There was no budget for marketing or anything like that. So it was all very much fly by the seat of your pants. So I fortuitously knew an agent who had once reached out to me after reading one of my books and said, I would love to represent you. And I said no, because I was like, what are you going to do? You're just going to take some of my money. What is this? So I reached back out to her and I said, hey, remember me? Hey, I wrote a new book. I'd love to see what you'd like to think about it. And that turned into The House in the Cerulean Sea, signed with her. And then we shopped the book around. And here's something I want people to understand, that even though I had publishing experience, even though I had many novels under my belt, and even though The House in the Cerulean Sea is, in my honest opinion, a very good book, it was rejected from publishers. There were publishers who rejected it. And that's facts of life. That happens. That is totally something that you have to get used to if you want to be in this industry. You have to get used to rejection, because it'll come at some point. But what my agent told me, and this is such wonderful advice, is that all it takes is getting your book into the hands of the one person who understands it, the one person who wants to champion it. That's what matters. So you can get rejection after rejection after rejection, but that 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th time you try, you might get your book into the hands of the one person who understands what you're doing with it and sees something with it and will try to fight for it. And that's so important, because rejection can sting. It sucks, but it's not the end of the world. You just got to pick yourself back up and try again. If you think you have to do what you think your stories are worth. And that's just part of the game. So we have landed at Macmillan and Tor, and that has been my home ever since. I've released 6 books with them since 2020, and just signed a new contract to release 9 more. So
wow.
We are going to be in the TJ Klune business with Tor for a very long time.
That's so awesome. It's great to hear the kind of the backstory of all of that, and really sparked an idea I had. I haven't gotten to finish Under the Whispering Door yet, but after reading on The House in the Cerulean Sea, I was really kind of wondering where your inspiration came from with kind of corporate bureaucracy that kind of wraps in there. Yes. And that makes total sense now.
I will tell you that the most devastating compliment that I've ever received came from a very high up at that company when he came into our branch one day and was just touring the office, and my manager said, you should talk to him about cases because he wants to hear about it. So I did. And at the very end of the conversation, he goes, you are very good at insurance. And I don't know if you've ever been told those exact words in that exact order before, but it is soul crushing. It hurts like you wouldn't believe. That's when I got the idea 2 months later to quit after 10 years of being in that job, salaried, full benefits. In February of 2016, I said bye and left, and I've been writing full time ever since.
That's really awesome. Yeah, that was in my notes, and then I didn't put it in my outline, but I'm happy that I got to get that answer.
Me too. You got to know that when I'm writing about corporations, corporate worlds, all the bureaucracy and legal red tape, I know a lot about it.
So, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, getting kind of back to the book, because one of my favorite books I've read this year. It's just so fun. But something I was really thinking of, this kind of genre that the book is in is very much in line with othered kids that have to kind of fight for something, kind of in that same idea of like Harry Potter or Miss Peregrine books. And there's a lot of TV shows currently out like that, like Sweet Tooth and Wednesday, and there's quite a few going on. But something I found so interesting about your book versus those in that specific genre is that all of those kids have to fight kind of for their life for something. But the kids in House on the Cerulean Sea are really just fighting to be accepted and to be kind of normalized in a community. It's very interesting and kind of much more believable and human in that kind of way. And I was just kind of curious where that came about from.
Yeah. So if I'm going to be writing about kids, if I am going to be writing about kids who have lived through trauma, writing about kids who have they're survivors. That's essentially what these kids are. If I'm going to be writing about them, I made some ground rules for myself. One, they could not be physically harmed when I'm writing about the characters. They cannot be like grievously injured or, very scared about life-ending things or stuff like that, as much as they champion murder themselves. I did not want to have anything like that happen to them. Also, I did not want them to be separated at any point, because, if I was a different writer and this was a different book, you could imagine Lucy getting dragged in front of extremely upper management to have to plead his case while Linus is standing right there,
For sure.
and that felt gross to me. That felt like that was not this book. That was not the story I wanted to tell. So while these kids are fighting for acceptance and the adults around them are doing their best to facilitate that, I wanted to make it very clear that this island was not about, all of it 100% was not about fighting back. This was also a place of healing for them. This was a place where they got to be kids for maybe the first times of their lives. And that was important to me, that we got to see kids actually being kids. Because one of the things that I think some writers can fall into the trap of, and I can admit that I've fallen into the trap myself, is writing precocious children who sound like they're 45 years old and speaking with wisdom beyond their years and everything like that. That's all well and good, and it can be a very tightrope to walk to do it well. But at the same time, kids are ridiculous. They are absolutely insane little meatbags. The thing with kids is they don't have the filter of cynicism that comes with age. They say whatever is in their head, and it is a remarkable thing to be able to witness, to be able to see, because the mind of a young person is just this vast, complex thing where connections are being formed and made. And sometimes they're made in really awkward, crazy ways. And it's just, I wanted to celebrate that. I wanted to show that these kids are not at some point going to be suiting up like X-Men or Umbrella Academy or anything like that. They're not going to be going out and fighting crime or anything like that. That's not what this book is about. This book is about learning that sometimes when you least expect it, your voice can be a weapon, and it can be one of the most powerful weapons that there is. And that is so important for not only young people to learn, but for older people, people of my generation and above. We need to remember that too, because we remember how it felt in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Hell, we just celebrated the 8-year anniversary of Obergefell legalizing gay marriage in the United States. It has only been 8 years since that happened. And it's so weird to me that we hear people back then, all the straight people, well, we've solved homophobia, everybody, and look where we are now. So sure. Let's see how that goes. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's kind of interesting thinking about that, just because my husband and I, we joke all the time about how just being a gay couple, at one time that was monument, that was so big. And now it's so normalized that we're like, we're just a gay couple. There's so many other people that have much bigger issues that are being told that is wrong by the government, by all kinds of people that have no business telling them how to live their lives.
And it's our job, to do what our forebears did for us, to fight for them. We need to make sure that we use our voices, because if you think back about it, I mean, if you know anything about queer history in the United States and Stonewall and the Black Cat in the 70s, then you know that butch women, lesbians, trans people were at the forefront of fighting for queer rights. And that is something that needs to be remembered and supported. I mean, a lot of people, especially young people, don't know that LGBTQ plus IA, the reason it starts with L is because that was the gift the queer community gave lesbians, because they were the ones who came in during the AIDS crisis.
Absolutely.
To help sick and dying men. So as a way to honor lesbians, they come first because of what they did. So our history is so important. And yes, there are times when it's easy for us cis white gays to feel like that, you know what, we it's so different than it was for us growing up. But now there are other people who need our help, and it's so important for us to lift them up and protect them like we were protected, or at least how people wanted us to protect us. I know that not all of us could have been protected.
For sure. And I think that you very much kind of get into that with just the fact that that Linus and Arthur, that they're not, that they're being gay isn't looked down upon. It's not even an issue with the kids, with upper management, any of those things, the townspeople. That's just kind of a given for them.
Yeah. So I made a decision a long time ago that unless it was narratively relevant, and I never wanted to get myself to that point, so I don't want to even do that, is to put homophobia in my books. Homophobia is boring. Homophobic people are boring people. That's just the way it is. If you're a homophobic person, then you're a boring person, and that is your entire life. So I feel no reason, or I feel no need to add that to my books when I can just go online and get that any time of day. So it's nothing needed in my books. I will not use homophobia as a narrative crutch at any point. And that's not me knocking any other author who uses that as part of a story that they want to tell, because that is their experience, their life. Homophobic people bore me, and that's how it is.
Yeah. Well, feel very much the same way.
Right. Yeah. They have nothing else going on. They're boring people, and I'm sad for them.
Exactly. I like that your trolls are much more magical than the online trolls.
Yeah. For real.
I think another important thing with that too is in the queer community, allyship is just such a huge thing. Your chosen family and having people that are non-marginalized really supporting the marginalized people. In the book specifically, you've got Helen the mayor, that's very much that. J-Bone at the record store, You've got the bellhop at the hotel, all just being completely supportive, no questions asked. And it's kind of beautiful to get that kind of example in there as well.
It's important to show, it's outdone. I mean, it's overused by now, but the whole quote attributed to Fred Rogers, "Look for the helpers." It's important that you yes, there are moments when the bigotry in the book is highlighted, whether it be from a character in the village, or whether it be the propaganda posters to see something, say something. The bigotry is there. And I don't try to shy away from that. But what I wanted to also highlight was for the fact that there are some people who just need to be educated. That's all you have to be. And once you are educated, because not understanding something when someone is different can sometimes create a sense of fear that's not really fear. It's just blind hatred. And we use the term fear because homophobia, fear, blah, it's that, but that's not necessarily what it is. It's just abject hatred. That's just what it is. And there are some people, though, who are just misinformed. And I really believe that we can spend our time, not all of our time, mind you, but we should spend time for people who are willing to listen. I firmly believe that if a conversation is capable and everybody's totally chill, and yeah, totally, I'm good with that. We may not agree at the end, but at the same time, I am showing you kindness. And if you can show me the same, then we're good. But it's times that when you have people that are coming out full force and attacking, saying books are grooming children and teachers are grooming children and this and that and this and that, it's just all BS. So I want to show the helpers, the people who are there that may not always understand, who may not be part of the community, but are more than willing to help, but at the same time, not becoming some kind of savior to do that. I actively needed to avoid Linus being the type of, oh, I'm going to come in here and fix everything. And, because I'm a good person now. That's not what it is. Without Linus, that place would have survived. That place would have been fine. They're better because of him now, but that place would have been fine without Linus. And so having him come in, and to me, the opening of the book is an homage to The Wizard of Oz. You have the sepia tone Kansas, but in here it's rain, it's gray, it's always dark and drizzly. And it's not until Linus that he steps into Oz for the first time, when he goes and sees the ocean, and it's this bright burst of color. And that is how I kind of saw this book, as this bright burst of color. And you have to have the other little bits of color with the people in the town that are showing they can be okay, that they are, for lack of a better word, being enlisted to help make the world a better place. And that's so important. And one last thing I want to hit on before we go to the next question is this. The word chosen family, or especially how publishers love to market things now as found family. Here's the thing. What a lot of them don't know, and I'm trying to help educate, and a lot of readers might know, but hopefully you all do, who are part of Pride and everything like that, know that found family is a queer thing. That is how we came to be. That is how I am. My only family is my brother and my sister. Everybody else in my family is not related to me by blood. Found family comes from the very real place of queer people not being accepted by their parents, not being accepted by their guardians, whoever should have given them love and support and caring, regardless of who they loved, did not do that for them. So they had to go out and make their own. That's where found family comes from, because that's what we did. That's what our queer community does. So I just wanted to get that off my chest.
No, I'm glad you did. And it's really interesting to think about the Wizard of Oz parallel as well, because reading it, it's absolutely that.
Oh God, it's that if you at any point in your life have the opportunity to see the Wizard of Oz on the big screen, do it. I guarantee you it'll change the way you look at color. You think if you've seen it on a TV, even the best TV in the world, trust me, go see it in a theater. You will not believe your eyes. It is extraordinary.
I've done it once about 15 years ago, but it was really incredible.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane to me. It's the fact that it still looks as good as it does is just insane to me.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Let me we've got it. I think we'll start on the questions from all of our guests out here. We had a whole bunch of them, so I want to make sure that we get all of those covered.
Absolutely.
All right. So some of the things people are wondering, can you tell us anything about what you're currently writing? I know you've got a lot in the works now that you told us.
I do have a lot in the works. So let me give you a little preview of what comes next. Something I need to say beforehand is that if I have not announced a book, I cannot talk about a book because, I don't want to get in trouble with my publisher. So please don't make me get in trouble with
We
my
don't want you to
publisher.
get in
Yeah,
trouble.
exactly. So I just released In the Lives of Puppets in April, and I got to do a wonderful tour across the United States and Canada. And then I spent a week in the UK touring over there, which was just the coolest thing in the world to be able to do something like that. And next week is the re-release, because my publisher, Macmillan and Tor, part of that 9-book contract that I signed, 4 were for brand new novels.
Okay.
5 were from my back catalog. They purchased the rights to 5 books, a 4-book series and a 1-book standalone. And the 4-book series is called the Green Creek series. And the first book is Wolf Song, and that releases in hardcover a week from today. And
nice.
that's crazy. It's crazy that I will give this warning. If you only know me from The House in the Cerulean Sea, if you only know me from Under the Whispering Door and In the Lives of Puppets, the 4-book Green Creek series is not that. It is very, I destroy feelings. Your feelings will be destroyed. And by the very end, you will be like, how did I get through this? And then you will thank me for it. That's how it is. And the Green Creek books are some of my favorites, and the fandom that is around Green Creek is extraordinary. And I'm very, very excited to bring those to new readers. Something aside from that, within the Lives of Puppets, the new novel that I just released, I wrote a short story set in that universe that is going to be released at some point, I think this year. And it's going to be just just showing something else that I can do, a little something different for me. It's my first attempt into some kind of horror. It's not out and out violent, gross, gory horror. It's more spooky. And I wanted to try it because horror is one of my favorite things in the absolute world. I love horror more than anything. And oh my God, after that, I can say next year, 2024, there will be a new novel for me, but that's all I can say at this point. But after that, I've got many more books to come. Don't worry.
Awesome. And it's nice you brought that up too, because I know we had a question about the re-release of Wolf Song and Raven Song, and they were wondering if the others were going to be re-released as well. So
Wolf Song comes out July 4th. Raven Song, we're doing a 1-2 punch that releases in hardcover in August.
Okay.
And then in 2024, we'll see the release of Heart Song in hardcover, and then the finale of Brother Song in hardcover. And then
they were very excited about those, so they were hoping that was going to be the story.
The whole series is being released in a hardcover, and all the covers you can see every single cover on my Instagram, because we posted those a few months back. But yes, it's getting the full treatment. So I get to traumatize a new wave of readers, which I'm very excited for.
Awesome. That's going to be great to see. Another question is that one of the favorite things about your books are the characters. And they all have their own little quirks that make them so unique. I think you kind of touched on that with having more characterization than you even put in the books, kind of their backstory. But they were wondering, is there any more to how you develop your characters outside of that? Any specifics?
Yeah, so something that I do that I hesitate to recommend because it's time consuming. But as I mentioned earlier, I take a long time to research, and then I write really fast. Okay. And then I take a long time to edit the first draft. And why do I take a long time to edit the first draft? Because I read every single piece of dialogue out loud. I have to read every single piece of dialogue out loud to make sure it sounds like an actual human person talking. Because when you're reading a book, and it looks like a machine wrote it. And you're like, would a normal person use these words in that phrase? And I mean, unless you're writing something that, is the highbrow literati, and that's, fine, that's well to do. But I need to make sure my characters sound like I actually want them to sound. So I tend to speak the dialogue out loud when I'm going back through, just to make sure that it's saying how I want it to say and sounding how I want it to sound. So it's something that is, again, very time consuming, but characterization is by far the most important thing for me. I need my characters to feel, let me walk that. I need my reader to feel like they are walking with the character, that they are right there with the character. I'm a very much a sensory driven writer. So when you are on this island and the sun is beaming on your face, down on your face, on the top of your head, and there's trees and they're dappling shadows all over the ground, and you can hear the surf, feel the sand between your toes, hear the birds calling. I want my readers to be able to feel all of that. So it feels like they're there. Either it feels like they're there, or they feel like they're watching it just bloom before their eyes. That's so important to me, because I know how it feels to be transported. I know how it feels to find that book that makes you feel like you were there. And that's how I'd like to write.
And it comes very much through, because every single character feels like their own person, fully actualized and very real. So
yeah, let me just use a little note. The kids in the outline, when I was writing about the kids, I would even write about what they might be like when they were teenagers, or what they might be like as adults. I put little stuff in there, so that way, even though I'll probably never tell that story, I could say, this is what they'll become. I could just plant little seeds for the kids. So that way, at least I know they're not real, but they're real to me. So I know what they'll be like after we close that last page.
Well, kind of in keeping with that, there's been quite a few questions asking if there's going to ever be a return to the house to kind of find out what goes on afterwards.
I cannot confirm nor deny if there is going to be another book. If there is going to be any announcement, you will hear it from me. Please stay tuned to my social media channel.
Perfect answer.
Just in case anybody from my publicity is watching, I did what you said.
Exactly. Well done. Let's see. Do you have any advice for other ADHD or neurodiverse writers on how to sit down and write their book? They just love how beautiful you've written. And I think you've kind of touched on that a little bit, of having your two desks.
So a big thing for me, a big part of my ADHD is hyperfixation. So when I find something that interests me, that can be a good thing, or it could be me spending 6 hours on Wikipedia and not having done anything for my day. So so when I talk about how I write fast, that's because I'm hyperfixated on that thing. That is the thing that has all of my attention. I eat, breathe, sleep that world. To give you an example, when I'm writing a book, or let me even take us further step back. When I'm researching the book, I am listening to music. So all those songs that you see pop up in The House in the Cerulean Sea, those were all part of a playlist. The playlist for The House in the Cerulean Sea was probably over 250 songs long. So what I would do is, when I would be out in the world, when I would be, walking my dog, going on a road trip, exercising, going grocery shopping, I would be listening to that music. So that way I was still in that world. So even though I was going about my everyday, I was still on the island with the kids and with Linus and with Arthur and Zoe. And it helps me to be able to stay in that world, helps me to be able to stay in focus. The playlist for my last book, In the Lives of Puppets, was over 500 songs long, because that book took a lot to be able to write about. And so the best advice I can give, because ADHD is different for everybody. I don't know you specifically as an ADHD person, so I can't tell you. I can tell you what works for me is I have a desk that does not have a window. I have everything outlined, planned. My calendar, I live and die by my calendar. I have to have my online calendar updated, because it's something I have to check. That tells me where I need to go, what to do, everything like that. I write at very specific times. I write for 3 or 4 hours in the morning, and then 2 or 3 times a week, I'll write for 3 hours at night. But I have set times. And when I'm not in those times, I'm not writing. So I have my schedule regimented. I have my desks oriented that fits me as an ADHD person. So that's what I do to write, to want it. So
That's perfect. Another question is, the term cozy fantasy seems to have been coined with your books in mind, maybe also Travis Baltree's Legends and Lattes. What are your thoughts on that classification, along with how it also seems to tie in with a lot of current queer fantasy, and how it pertains to fantasy writing in general, to our present time and culture?
So I have an interesting relationship with cozy fantasy. It kind of started at the beginning of the pandemic, The House in the Cerulean Sea and a couple of other books came out and generated more interest in this idea of cozy fantasy, even though it's been, I mean, I read that in Diana Wynne Jones' Howl's Moving Castle when I was a kid, that kind of fantasy, that kind of safe fantasy. And that's what I was trying to evoke when I was writing The House in the Cerulean Sea, that kind of almost British absurdist humor. And it's wonderful to see that people are discovering that. But my thing is that I do not like being put in a box. So if someone says, oh, TJ Klune wrote The House in the Cerulean Sea, a cozy fantasy, and I'm like, okay, cool. Then Under the Whispering Door, this is also a cozy fan. I'm like, well, I don't know if, I mean, it's a tea shop, so okay, yeah, but it's also about grief and death and dying. And then In the Lives of Puppets, a cozy, no, okay, that's not a cozy, that's not supposed to be cozy. And so for me, it's awesome because, let's face it, House in the Cerulean Sea has done really well, and I'm very proud of that fact. But readers cannot expect me to write the same book over and over and over again. I can't do that. My ADHD won't allow it. I can't. I will get bored, and you will be able to tell that I'm bored. So while I love this space that I'm currently occupying with books that you could be described as happy queer books, where there may be danger and stuff like that, it'll still go forward. That this maybe after I'm gone, long after I'm gone, if I have a legacy at all, people will look back at this time period and be like, oh, this was TJ's happy period, followed immediately by his disaster period where he killed off every character. And so I don't know. Cozy fantasy is great. And if that makes you happy, then you know what? That makes me happy, because all I care about is you're reading a book. That is the only thing that matters, is that you're reading.
Yeah, for sure. With that being said, there's also interest in, do you have a favorite book that you've written?
Oof. It's like asking parents if they have favorite children. So yes, of course I do. I have on any given day, the answer might change. But for me, usually I go back to a book I wrote in 2015. It's called How to Be a Normal Person. And it was a book where I wrote it to come out to myself for the second time in my life when I realized I was asexual. So okay. I wrote a book about a video store owner who rent a video store rental place, who owns that, and he is perturbed and interested in the asexual hipster that just started working at the coffee shop next door. It is not fantasy. It is a straight up romantic comedy. And the question asked in the title, how to be a normal person, that's not the asexual person asking that question. The asexual person is just who they are, and that's just how they are, and that's accepted and loved and respected throughout the entire book. And that book was me realizing who I was again for the second time in my life, and the time I got to spend with those characters, Gus and Casey, the We Three Queens, and Lottie with the drag queen hair. It's some of the happiest time I've ever had writing. And the most amazing thing that happened from that book, and even though that book came out in 2015, to this day, I still get messages from people saying that book helped them figure out that they were asexual too. And then I get to write a book like In the Lives of Puppets, a huge, big hardcover release, and I get to make that main character asexual. Hell yeah. Happy Pride, everybody. That's how we win. It's how it is. So I love that book because I love how it made me feel. And I love how it has made other people feel. And the lasting impact may not be on the same scale of something like The House in the Cerulean Sea, but it matters just as much.
That's really awesome. It's neat that you were able to take that and expand upon it in another book then and have the same kind of characterization in that way.
Yeah, I told myself that if I ever got into the position where I was going to be on a much bigger stage than what I was used to being on, and maybe having a book release in hardcover and get to go on tours and stuff like that, that one day I would put a big fat asexual character right there in the middle, and I did.
That's so cool. I love it. Let's see. We've got a question about your favorite part about writing and the writing process.
This is going to probably make many people upset, but my favorite part about writing is editing. I love editing. I love my editor. Her name is Allie. And remember when I told you, or remember when I said earlier that all it takes is getting your book into the right hands of that one person who understands it? That was Allie. She totally gets me. She gets my humor. But not only that, when I tell her, please you don't need to blow smoke up my butt. I know I'm a good writer. I just need you to help me be a better writer. So that's what she does. She brings me the greatest pleasure when I tell her to kill my darlings. And I mean, cut. I am a very verbose writer. I'm a very verbose person. And I have her, she basically goes into an overgrown topiary garden and makes art out of it. And I would not be the same writer without her. My editor is one of the best people, and I love editing because your drafts before it gets to the editor, they're rough drafts. That's what they are. Editing is not about making you feel bad or tearing your story down. Editing is about finding the best story within, the best story in there. Sometimes a book will take a lot of edits. Some books don't need to have as many edits. That's just how it is. But no matter the amount of edits, your editor's job should be to support you as a writer and to make you a better writer. That's what they do. And that's what Allie has done for me.
That's really fun to hear because the next question, actually, I think will kind of wrap into this. It was someone talking about your settings in the books and how vivid and wonderful they are. Their question was, how do you balance telling enough without over-explaining so that we get the feeling of where we are without it being blatantly told to us in so many words necessarily?
Yeah, that's my editor.
Yeah.
I am the absolute queen of over-explaining everything. My editor knows. So basically, and I will admit it's getting to a point where I write now, I'm like, oh, she's going to cut this part. She's going to cut this, isn't she? I'm going to write it anyways. I'm going to write it because I want to. That's just what I'll do. And 9 times out of 10, yeah, she cuts that part. And I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. I had to try. But
exactly.
For in terms of the places, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a very sensory driven writer, and the house in the Cerulean Sea, that island needed to feel like a real lived in place. It needed to feel like another main character. Under the Whispering Door, it's a much smaller setting than the house in the Cerulean Sea because 95% of that book takes place within a 4-story tea shop. So I had to make that tea shop feel like an entire character itself, because if it didn't, you're going to start feeling constricted and confined and smothered, and it'll start feeling like one of those horrifying videos you see online of cave divers crawling through little caves and their heads are getting smushed like that. Yeah, you can get smothered if it feels like that everything is not moving around like it should. A house like the house in the Cerulean Sea or the tea shop should feel like a real living, breathing space, even if it's just wood or in reality just words. And that's I have to be able to do that. I have to be able to make those places feel real, because if you're going to be spending time there, you're going to want to spend time there.
Yeah, for sure. I also want to throw in at the end, this person that put in this question just had a really great comment for you, that they wanted to thank you for sharing your stories. Your stories were the first time they felt their own experiences, that they were important and worthy within a book. They saw themselves. So I just thought that was really beautiful.
It is. And it's so funny. Back in 2010, before my first book came out, I told myself that if even one person walked away learning from something from my book, or taking a look at their own life, then I'd have done what I set out to do. Could I have imagined where I'd be 12, 13 years later? No. I started in my 20s. I just turned 41 years old. I'm a different person now, but the fact that I get to do what I love every day as my job, that's freaking mind-blowing, man. That is just absolutely out of this world. And it's just to be able to help people feel seen is something that I wished I had as a kid. So
Agreed.
If I can give that to people now, then I'm doing what I've been tasked with doing with my life. And I cannot ask for a better job to be able to do something like that, because no matter how far advanced we think we are, no matter if it's in that impossible sounding year of 2023, there are still young people in rural settings who don't have the same access to the outer world that everybody else does, and they deserve to see themselves in a book. And that's what I hope happens. And I have been very fortunate to see that happen with what I've done, and it means the world to me. It's the best thing in the world.
Well, thank you, because you do an amazing job of it. So you're doing exactly what you were supposed to be doing.
Oh, thank you.
Kind of going back to the tea room that we were just talking about and kind of creating that, had a question about how you actually came up with the tea room as being kind of the central location for Under the Whispering Door.
So when I was when I was researching Under the Whispering Door, or what I was doing, a lot of it was focused on end-of-life care. I talked to a lot of people in the end-of-life profession who work in palliative care. I talked to doctors, I talked to nurses, I talked to support staff, but I also talked to some very interesting people that I did not know existed. And we all know doulas who help with the birthing process. I did not know that there were death doulas. Doulas who work with families where somebody is sick and dying, and they work with the patient to help them create legacy projects and help them with their families to essentially smooth the transition. They help the families with the first stages of grief. They're there through every single step of the way. And when I was writing this book, or when I was formulating this book, I thought, okay, Hugo, the ferryman, the one who helps spirits, he's essentially a death doula. Because when their job starts, his job begins, because death doulas are not medical professionals. They're not there to administer medical care. They are there to supplement care. They are there to help with the emotional side, the psychological side. And that's what Hugo does in the tea shop. He helps spirits not with their physical ailments, but with their mental and soul-born ailments. And that's what he does in there. So when I knew it was going to be that much focused on that kind of death, I thought about a place that makes me feel happy, a place that makes me feel warm and cozy. In Tucson, Arizona, there is this wonderful little tea shop down on 4th Avenue that I loved to bits when I lived there. And it was a place that had overstuffed couches. It was a place that had plants hanging from the ceilings. And I realized tea, of course, tea, because tea is one of the oldest drinks in the world. And in doing research for that, I found that after water, tea is the second most consumed drink in the entire world. People have all of these rituals surrounding tea that goes back thousands of years. And guess what else? We all have rituals in death. What happens to our body? Every culture has their own ritual when it comes to tea, and every culture has their own ritual when it comes to death. So it felt like this weird little puzzle piece, 2 puzzle pieces locking into place. And so I set out to make a tea shop where I would feel comfortable going, even if things felt like they were all out of control.
That makes total sense. I wouldn't have put that together, but yeah, it's really awesome thinking about the two of them together.
Yeah, and it's just one of those little moments when you're writing it, writing is a very solitary journey when you're writing the initial drafts, but there are moments when you think of stuff like that you're like, man, I'm a freaking genius. And you let yourself have that little victory.
You give yourself a nice pat on the back.
Right, exactly. You got to take it where you can get it.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Well, I've got my last question that I've had submitted so far, but it is, and you may not be able to answer this, but are there any plans to have any of your books adapted to movies or TV?
I cannot confirm nor deny if there's any adaptation in the works or if any of my books have been optioned. Please stay tuned to my social media for any announcements. There we go. Take that, tour publicity. You got it.
Well, I'll just say, if any of them are, I can only imagine how beautiful and amazing they're going to look, because in my head they're incredible. So
I would, in my dream world, The House in the Cerulean Sea would be either an animated film a la Studio Ghibli, like Spirited Away and Princess
that'd be
Mononoke,
beautiful.
or an animated film like Leica Studio does with the stop motion animation with the puppetry and everything like that. I would love to be able to see something like that. Kubo and the Two Strings, the box trolls, how they move, all the beautiful puppets. I would love for something like that. I think it would make an amazing visual novel. And I just want to see Chauncey as a little figure, because
I would love to see Chauncey.
he's my favorite. So
that's awesome. I saw one question just pop up, and someone was wondering, what's your dog's name?
Oh, my dog, his name is Hendrix. He is 8 years old now.
Okay.
I got him on October 1st, 2016. I went to the pound because I had just come back from spending a month in the UK doing a road trip with some friends. And I came back and said, I really, really want a dog. And so I went online to my local SPCA website, found this dog that had these humongous ears, and the left one was flopped over just at the tip. And I said, oh, I have to go meet that dog. So when I get there, the ladies behind the desk are like, who are you here to see? And I said, oh, I want to see Hendrix. And they go, Hendrix doesn't like men. And I said, oh, okay. So I guess I'm going to go see him anyways, maybe. I mean, I'm a homosexual, so we'll see what happens. And so I go in, and he's sitting in his little cot in the far edge of the cell. So I just sit down there for an hour, and I just talk to him for an hour. And then I said, after that hour, I said, okay, let's see if we can do this, buddy. Let's see if we can meet each other. So I went back at the front and told them, hey, I think I want to meet Hendrix. And they go, he doesn't like men. And I said, okay, well, you're giving me a complex. So what's going on here? And they brought him in. He brought in his ball, and he set his ball in my lap and sat down in front of me. And then I took him home. That is the story of how I got my dog. And he's a good guy. He's a German Shepherd, Alaskan Malamute mix. So he's a big dog, but he has been my buddy for all this time going on. It'll be 7 years this year? Yeah, 7 years this year. He's my best friend, and he's currently sitting in the hallway waiting for me to finish because he knows he wants to go on his walk.
Nice. Well, I do think that we are close to being out of time here, but I just want to check. Larissa, did we have any other questions come in that I'm not seeing?
The only other question that I see is talk about your teen series. What inspired you to delve into YA, fan fiction, and gay superheroes?
Yeah. So The Extraordinaries, my YA series, those were the other 3 books that I released with Tor over since 2020. The Extraordinaries is about a queer kid named Nick with ADHD who loves the superheroes so much that protect his city so much that he writes vaguely self-insert fan fiction about them. So essentially he's writing love letters to this one superhero that he is in lust with, I should say. And the story follows the pratfalls of this boy with ADHD, this queer kid who might be a little bit more powerful than he thinks. And I love these books. The reason why I wrote these books was because I never got to see a queer kid with ADHD when I was a kid. I never got to read any books about people like me. So I wanted to write a book about a person like me and put it in a place that I love, which is comic books. I love comic books. I always have. I remember Wolverine made me gay when I was like 12 years old because of X-Men #1. There's a scene where he bursts out of Professor X's desk and extends one middle claw right towards Professor X's head and stops like a couple of inches away. And I remember reading that as an 11 or 12-year-old going, oh boy, I like short, hairy men. Okay, what is this? So I love comic books. I love them to pieces. So I wanted to write my own version of a Marvel movie, I guess, in a way, except instead of it being about the superheroes, what if it was about the bumbling sidekick who kind of always open mouth, insert foot, because that is Nick to a T. But fun fact about that series, there are scenes in those 3 books where the reader gets to read Nick's fan fiction that he's writing about the superheroes. And I did not want to make it sound like I was making fun of 16-year-olds who write fan fiction by using like flowery language and stuff like that. I'd never wanted to make sure that I was making fun of fan fiction in any way, stretch, or form, because fan fiction is wonderful, lovely, amazing, and a necessary and absolutely deserved part of literature. I just wanted to make sure that it sounded like a 16-year-old would write. So what did I do? I plagiarized myself. I found my old fan fiction from when I was 12, 13 years old. So when you're reading the fan fiction in the series and it's Shadowstar growled seductively, that used to be Fox Mulder growled seductively to Agent Skinner, because I was writing X-Files fan fiction when I was like 12 years old. So I lifted wholesale from my own fan fiction and just put it in the book so it would sound like a kid writing fan fiction, which it was.
That's
So
really
that's
awesome.
The Extraordinaries. Yes.
Nice. Well, I think it's probably time that we let you go, but I want to say thank you so much for joining us. It was awesome getting to talk to you. You've really kind of capped off our Galena Pride celebration out here. So that's really awesome. Thank you to the Galena Library for hosting this for us. It's great getting them to connect you to all of our audience out here. And thanks to everybody for coming out to join us tonight. It was great getting all of your questions and all of your participation in this.
Absolutely. And people, I know you know this. If you're here, you know this, but libraries are backbones of communities. They are so, so important. Please make sure to support your library. If you see any weird fascists trying to come in and say, you can't put these books in, step up for your library and your librarians, because they are fighting the front line of a culture war they should have nothing to do with, and they are saving our community. So Larissa and the Galena Library, you guys are amazing and wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for being here. And I know that our library director is in the audience as well, so she'd probably love to hear that as
Good,
well. So
because
thank you very much.
love you guys.
Amazing.
All right.
And there's a lot of wonderful comments in the chat saying thank you and that it was a fascinating conversation and complimenting both of you. So
Wonderful. And Douglas, thank you so much for being here and having such a delightful set of questions for me. I greatly appreciate that. That's so awesome.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
Yeah.